And we're live. Ready? Now. Reincarnated. Oh. It's the music video audio. You froze.
Did I?
Yeah, there you go. Hey.
Hey girl, hey.
How you doing?
How you doing?
They're not like us.
They're not like us.
They're not like us.
Mm-mm.
Ready?
We're just one of a kind.
I really hope it's picking up that audio. We don't know anything about this software. We just kind of went with it.
That's okay. We're figuring it out.
We're figuring it out.
Yep.
But we're here. We're here.
So go ahead. Are you going to introduce yourself?
Yeah. Hello, everyone. My name's Natalie. I'm 28 years old. I'm from Queens, New York. This is my amazing mother, Blanca.
Hey, girl. Hey.
Hey, hey, hey. You're a little staticky. Just a little bit. But I can hear you well. But yeah, from New York, currently living in Utah, loving the mountains, loving the West. Mom is in Orlando, Florida. She is originally from the Bronx, New York.
What's happening?
Hey, oh, what? Coincidence? I didn't even notice you had that on. But yeah, we're from New York. We are living in separate states, but closer than ever, and wanting to start this podcast to laugh, cry, and scream about our generational traumas and the healing journey that we have been on, both together and as individuals. And I feel like we have phone calls all the time, and we have these incredible, introspective, revolutionary conversations that we both agree we want to share with the world. And so that was kind of what inspired this whole podcast idea. We tried starting it, I don't know, sometime
January
last year. Yeah, the beginning of the year.
It was January.
And yeah, just things kept coming up. We were trying to start it with my friend Brooke, along with my other sisters, and none of us, our schedules always collided, but we're here. We're doing it, and we want the world to hear our story. So, I don't know, Mom, if you want to start with you and then pivot over to me and just kind of like a quick background of, I feel like we could go on for hours about our life, but just, some of the adversities that you've been through, from day one to now, if you could even narrow it into 5 minutes.
It's a lot to narrow in 5 minutes, but I'll just start by telling everyone I'm Blanca Padilla. And like Natalie said, I was born in the Bronx, New York. What's happening? This podcast will probably upset a lot of people because when you're healing generational trauma, there's a lot that you got to air out. And I'm pretty sure that a lot of people won't be happy. But this is my journey. And I know that part of the journey is sharing what you've been through. Mm-hmm. And you want me to start from the top. Let's go back. Let's go back.
Let's go back.
I'm 45 years old. I was born in the Bronx, New York in 1979. I'm a New Yorican. For those of you who don't know, a New Yorican is someone from Puerto Rican descent who's born in New York. And if you don't know, now you know. So I was born to young parents. My mother was 22, and my dad was a substance abuser. So that's how life started for me, which is wild, but I know I'm not the only one out there. Um, my father is the source of most of my trauma. Um, not only did he abuse substances, he had a lot of mental illness issues, which go in hand because addiction is a disease. It's a disease of the brain. Part of the healing is not only spiritual and mental, it's also physical. So there's a lot of things that we will address on this podcast and through this journey because um, holistic and harmonious involves a lot of aspects in life. Um, and that's part of that journey. Um, I was raised mostly by my grandmother. I think in order for my mother to try to protect us from our dad, she kind of drop shipped us at grandma's house.
The
Um,
drop shipping. She's the
she
OG
just
of drop shipping.
she is. It was like Dumbo when the birds dropped off the babies at the door.
Mhm.
So yeah, she left us with grandma, which was another source of trauma because growing up I felt abandoned. And I didn't even know that I felt that way until I was older. It's amazing what you learn about your little self when you start healing at an older age. But
Oh my God, yes.
we grew up with grandma, so there was a lot of abandonment issues because I felt like my parents didn't love me. They just left me with abuela. And don't get me wrong, I love my abuela. She was heaven sent. She was my guardian angel through this lifetime. And I don't think I would be the person I am today if it wasn't for her. However, and I hate that I have to say however, um, she was part of a religion that caused another level of trauma. And Jehovah Witnesses. And I
Yeah.
know that when you mention their name um, in a negative way, you're considered an apostate or enemy of the religion. So I know that, like I said, this podcast will upset family, but this is my healing, and I'm gonna talk about it because part of my trauma was that religion
Mhm.
and how they alienated us for being who we were. But little kids don't choose who they are. I didn't choose my family.
Yeah.
So, um, it's like I said, um, part of this healing process. You're going to piss people off, and I'm okay with that. Um,
I haven't even thought about that.
I
I'm not gonna
knew
lie.
I knew because I'm like, look, if we're going on this healing journey, and you have to be honest when you're in this
You
healing
have
journey,
to
you
be
don't have to
honest.
say some shit that people love to sweep under because you know how family secrets are and family trauma. There's so much family trauma because everyone's putting it under the rug. No one's talking about it. No one's airing it out.
Right.
No one's opening the wounds. No one's talking about the uncle that wants to touch everybody. No one's talking about, you know what I mean? They don't, so
Hmm.
I always knew that the day I opened my mouth, there was going to be a lot of people who were pissed at me. I mean, I try to have candid conversations with my mom now, and
And it doesn't work
I
out
hit
the
a
way
brick
it doesn't
wall.
work out the way that
It
you
doesn't
want it
work
to.
out because they don't want to talk about it. They don't want to talk about it. Hey, I remember this, and this happened. Shut down. You know what
Right.
I mean? And I don't
That
plan
didn't
on.
happen. I don't
I don't
remember
want to do that
that.
to my kids. I don't want to keep passing that down. If we don't talk about it and open up that wound, it's never going to heal.
Girl, can I just say real quick that this is the day that I've been praying for?
Hmm?
That for years and years and years and years, I prayed that we would all come together and heal. And I didn't know what that looked like, But as a child, I knew that our family was broken, and I knew that there was a lot of heartache, and I could never put my finger on it, as a kid, just not knowing well enough, but knowing enough, having the level of emotional intelligence to know that our family was broken. And I used to pray, I used to beg God, please, I want peace, I want love, I just want us to get along.
I didn't
And
even know where to start to find that, but I knew that it was affecting my children, and I knew that I would look around me and say, I'm not going to do that to them. I just didn't have the tools. And that's why I know I passed a lot of trauma on to you guys. You know what I mean?
yeah, and that you did, and we're going to talk about all that stuff too.
We're going to
But
talk about that too. I was a teenage mother because I had enough of my family, all of them. My father's abuse, no one ever coming to our aid. You know, I approached aunts and uncles and told them the wild shit that was happening at home, and no one wanted to get involved. You know, even
yeah.
abuela, who loved us and would try her best to protect us, no one wanted to get involved. You know, no one wanted to confront the monster. You know, even grandma. I remember begging her and telling her the things that he used to do to us, and she was like, the visitation rights are by the court. I can't do anything."
When you're saying grandma,
Well,
you're talking about your mother.
my mother, yeah, my mother. I call her grandma because of you guys, but
But the
um,
but the people don't know that, so you
I
gotta call her
know,
mom.
yeah. My mother never stood up for us, and I know she's gonna hear that, and I've told her to her face, so you ain't telling her nothing new. But it is something that she can't face. So, and I get it. She did the best she could. My mom was scared of the monster too. And when I say monster, that's my father. So, um, it caused me to be a hard ass person at a very young age. And I will talk about some of the trauma in further detail in another podcast, but it was just bad, really
Yep.
bad. He
Yep.
tortured us, things that children shouldn't be going through.
I think you should read the letter that you wrote to your mother a few years ago, because it wasn't, Mom, my whole life you would tell me these stories, and let me tell you, you told them to me so much I was numb to them. And I didn't fathom the level of hurt that you experienced until you read that letter that you wrote to your mom. And I know you remember we sobbed together because
Hmm.
I read that letter and I saw the words, and it just hit me in a way that it never has. And I looked up at you and I said, I am so sorry that that happened to you. And the healing that happened in that moment, I felt like was so deep for the both of us. But on another podcast, I think that's a really good one to start with.
Yeah, I will absolutely share that letter one day. And, I just wanted her to acknowledge my pain and suffering as a child. And again, even though I wrote that letter and I wrote it from the heart, and yes, it did say some hard shit that we went through. Her response was always very condescending. Like, "Oh, I know, I've always been such a bad mother. Sorry." She has never taken any accountability.
And
And
I know that's gotta hurt. I
it
know
does
that's gotta
hurt.
hurt.
I'm sorry we hurt you. We were the people that were supposed to love and protect you. And sorry that
Right.
we just kept passing you around like a fucking blunt. Because, I went from abuela's house to aunt and uncles, and how many times they sent me to Puerto Rico every summer. Like, we were the children that no one wanted to deal with. We were
Hmm.
nobody's kids.
Yeah, you guys were the black
We were
sheep, the
nobody's kids.
outcasts.
We were nobody's kids. Whose kids were we? We were abuela's kids for sure.
I was just gonna say that.
Because
I know
we were
my
abuela's
great
kids for
grandparents, who I
sure.
also knew, yeah, my great grandparents, who I also knew, who also helped raise us too. When you were a single teenage mother, they stepped in to help too. But they were probably some of the most loving people. that I have ever
Yeah.
met in my life. And I'm not saying that because they're my great grandparents. I'm saying that because they were what I believe what the embodiment of Christ is.
That's how I feel about my grandmother. Yeah. I've never met anyone like that
Never.
who was so full of God, you know.
So
When
full
she
of
passed
God.
away, what I thought was like, God, thank you for showing me what you are like, because
Mm,
I know that that much love was divine.
yeah. She was the glue and the grace in our life that we needed
I
when we
needed
had
her.
it.
I needed her. I would not be the person I am today without my grandparents. My grandparents made me who they gave me the only shot I had. And I wilded out. I did. Around 13 years old, something switched in my brain. I knew that no one was going to come to save me, and I knew that I had to come to myself. And I became a rebel.
It's a mixture of
And
puberty with trauma.
I
You're like
was
something in your brain switched.
by
Puberty.
13, I knew that by 13, by 13, I knew my way home. By 8 years old, I can travel the five boroughs on a train, on a bus, in a car. I knew where I was going at all times because of survival. Because if dad got drunk and fucked up in the Bronx, I had to remember how to get my ass to Brooklyn, to Abuela's house. I always carried change. I knew how to use a payphone. I knew how to call Abuela. Like, my emergency plan was always in my head. 8-year-olds shouldn't think like that. I used to, when he was picking me up on Friday, in my head, I was already like a parent thinking, I gotta keep my eye on Melissa. I gotta make sure I got
Melissa's her
money.
sister.
Gotta make sure I got money in case something happens, in case I gotta call grandma, in case I gotta hit the train. I could get in someone's car and tell them how to get from the Bronx to Brooklyn. At 8 years old, I knew adults that couldn't do that. I remember my aunts asking me when they wanted to go out. They were adults, but since they were never allowed to go out because of the religion, when we would go out, my aunt literally would say, Esther, how do we get there? And I was like 8. So, um,
It's funny, but it's also kind of tragic.
it's
It's funny
tragic.
because your aunts were asking their 8-year-old niece how to get around Manhattan, and you
Tragic for a lot of
only knew
reasons.
that. You only knew that because you were on survival mode.
Uh-huh.
And no one and everyone failed to realize that. They probably thought you were a clever kid. Everyone
They thought
failed
I
to
was
realize that
smart.
you were right. And they didn't realize that you were just a child surviving.
I was on fight or flight. I thought that's what your nervous system is supposed to feel like. I wasn't, I was almost 40 years old when I realized that I lived in fight or flight and that it wasn't normal and that I have lived like that my whole life.
It's amazing what the brain does to adapt.
Hmm.
It's
It
crazy.
is. I probably can't even get from the Bronx to Brooklyn now without my GPS. But
Yeah.
um yeah, so I was wild and I ran away and they were angry. And all I can think is the fucking audacity for anyone to be angry at me.
Yeah,
What
just
did
a
y'all,
rebellious
what
child
did
on
you
fire.
guys, what did everyone expect? What did you expect? I lived in hell. Now, it got worse because I married your dad.
Oh boy.
And that was reliving a trauma. And that's what I want to talk about because I've relived that trauma. I feel
Yep.
like I've dated people like my father in different um, shapes and forms. Let's just put it that way. But again, it's a nervous system and what we attract into our life. And I never thought I would embrace my trauma the way I have throughout the years because I spent so much of my life fucking angry, mad,
Yeah.
mad, mad. And I feel like I had the right to be mad, but I also feel like it robbed me of a lot of things.
Which I think is
Um,
why you decided to have babies so young, was that you wanted to show them. You wanted to, this is, I'm gonna stick it to you. This is
I
how
wanted
you
to show
raise the
them about
family.
everything. I feel like I've gone through my whole life being a savage because I had so much to prove because of the way mom's side of the family treated me. I was a black sheep because I wasn't part of the religion and because I was the kid that got dropped off at the doorstep, right? I felt like no one ever saw value in us. So my whole life, I've walked around like I'm gonna fucking show them. My whole life has been like that. So now I'm trying to change a narrative because that's not how I want to get to my success. That is not how I want to get to my success. I don't want to get there like I'm going to show them and I got something to prove. I want to do it for me. I want to do it for me, because I deserve it. Because I deserve it. Because that little girl that got dropped in, at that doorstep was worth it. She was worth it. Look at her.
Yep.
So I don't know if that's 5 minutes. I think I went way over, but that's that's
It's
that's
about 23 minutes, but
that's my
but
that's a lot to put in 5 minutes, and that's just scratching the surface. And through this podcast, we'll go through the levels. We'll
yeah.
go through the levels of trauma. We'll go through how one trauma just led to the other trauma. Because I was
Yeah,
just
we'll
like,
go into the specifics. We'll go into specific stories and break down those stories and look at them from the outside in now.
absolutely. And
Yeah.
how when I changed my mindset and I realized that we create our own reality, and I realized that I had to let go of the resentment. And when I heard Wayne Dyer say that he sent his drunk father love when he finally found him, um, I've realized that I needed to rewrite the story. And when I started switching my resentment for gratitude, the the trauma stopped repeating itself so often in my life, and the blessings started coming, and my life started transforming, and I continued to rise
It's
be,
amazing what
beyond
forgiveness.
beyond my expectations. When I started to realize that life wasn't supposed to be like this, and this is all conditioning, and that everything I desire can come to me easily if I let it, if I allow it, if I step
Yeah.
out of the way.
Yep. And so many people get in
Um,
their way of themselves because they have such a grip on their story. They've got this firm grip they don't want to let go of, they don't want to forgive. And it's like once you can forgive and surrender, once you can crack into your heart, you open up space for light to enter.
I
There's
don't want the
there's a
story.
science
I don't
behind
want the
it.
story.
Well, you are the story, and that's fine. You don't have to attach yourself from the story, but you are the story. You are a walking, living testimony. You are a walking and living testimony. You are the story, and you don't have to attach yourself to the story. You don't have to relive the story.
Mm,
You don't have to
yeah,
reside there anymore, but
yeah,
you are. And you are who you are today because of that story. It's incredible when you
a
really
hundred
just
percent.
break it all down.
Mm-hmm. And
So,
that's why I've
well,
embraced the story, because I love who I've become. And I know that I wouldn't have, like, this wouldn't be my story today if I hadn't gone through the things I went through back then. And so I've accepted it. I do not have the heavy heart that I had 10 years ago.
amen.
Amen.
Amen, we're here.
Hmm.
Girl. We'll put the ball in my court, though. We'll kind of like take from where you left off.
Yeah,
I
because
feel like
because at that point, I passed my trauma to you.
at that point, yeah. So it's funny. We can laugh about it now, but during the thick of it, girl, I swear I was born fully aware of the trauma that was my life. I This is crazy, and I share this because it is very real to me, and I'm currently doing therapy, specific therapy for people with this experience. And the experience is that I remember as far back as being in my mother's wound. Or womb, sorry. Wound and womb, I guess you could say.
I
I
guess you
remember
can.
as far back as playing patty cake with my mom from inside her womb. I remember as far as back as feeling her emotions and feeling the vibration of her voice. And that was something that came up for me during a remarkable meditation way, 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 way back. And it opened up the floodgates of memories for me. I remember during that time. I started remembering a lot of very specific things about my childhood. But and it's crazy because I just want to say this, but there is a study right now on people who can remember that far back and who can remember just deep, deep memories from their childhood tend to have had a traumatizing life or derive from or were born from someone who was traumatized. It awakens your nervous system in a way that it does not awaken to most average people who are born into a remotely normal life. So there's I feel like there's so many facets to it. I was also born in a very traumatic setting. They cut my face open. Apparently I wasn't breathing, or that something happened. My mom could get into the specifics later, but something happened where they had to do an intervention and they had to do an emergency C-section. They cut into my face, they cut my mom's uterus the wrong way. It became a lawsuit. Literally from the day that I was born into some form of trauma right away. I wasn't born peacefully. And I feel like it was the remnants of my mom's trauma. It's like the manifestation of my mom's trauma carried on. And I like took the baton and have been running with it since, and have decided I'm going to drop the baton and I'm going to turn around and I'm going to look back and I'm going to face these things head on. And I feel like that's what we've been doing synonymously. We've been doing that together as a team. When things come up for me, I call you and we talk about it. We cry together. It's been great. But, you know, that's how I was born. Long story short, it was nuts. My father, very abusive, very vile, evil person who I try to have a relationship till this day, and I just can't find myself at a place feeling safe enough to do that. But he was abusive towards my mother. It's probably the reason why she even went into complications during her labor. After giving birth to me, he was in her ear, threatening her life while she was half unconscious, still waking up from the surgery, threatening her life because the doctors cut me. He himself has admitted to choking the doctor or the person who cut my face. They had to kick him out of the hospital. Now that's the type of man that we're dealing with. That was my role model. That was my dad. And by the time I was 3, I was fully aware of my surroundings. I would say similar to my mom, who was fully aware at the age of 8 of where she was going. I remember having to pay attention to people's expressions, and I still do. People's expressions still give me panic attacks sometimes. And I'm in the process of therapy right now and learning that that's tied to me living in fight or flight as a child and having to walk on eggshells and be careful of the people around me. And so that was, that was my childhood. My father, he left. He cheated on my mother with somebody that he worked with at a Blockbuster. My mother went to go fight his mistress, and I witnessed that, and I witnessed the violence, and I remember that day like it was yesterday. So there was just too much violence around my life during my very important developmental years. And today, as a 28-year-old woman, I am still in the process and the integration of those things and learning more and more about my nervous system and what triggers me and what causes me to go into that state, even though I live a very blessed life today, a very good job, great pay. I am in a great relationship with a man that honors and respects me, who wants to marry me, who he comes from a family, the parents that are still married, that still love each other. Just all the stability in my life right now that I thank God for every day, that I have prayed for years. I have it. And there are still moments where I feel like I am living in this loop, and I feel like I am living a lie, almost like an imposter, almost like I don't deserve this. And so, long story short, we have both had our fair share of trauma in many different ways, but mom and I, we've been trauma bonding since out the womb.
Mm-hmm.
Since out the womb, and I watched my mom grow up. I knew my mom when she was a teenager, and I feel proud to say that. A lot of people might not, but I feel proud to say that I knew my mom at her absolute worst, and I know my mom at her absolute best. It's such a strange, bittersweet situation. But
Yeah.
we want to share our story. We want to talk about the things that come up for us. And we want to get raw. We want to get into the nitty gritty, because we know we're not alone. We know that we're living during a time when people are ready to face their shit. And it's just important. It's important that people see that there are others out there, that you're not alone, and that you absolutely can escape the conditionings that you were born into.
The programming. You can reprogram.
Break every chain. You
You can
can break
reprogram.
every chain.
And don't get
Break
me
every
wrong.
chain.
Like
Break
your
every chain.
nervous system was addicted to that for such a long time that there are some times that, like you said, you still feel like you're in a loop or so, or in your
Like
past.
I'm triggered. Like I'm
The trigger,
like I'm in
right?
danger. Yeah.
Right. So that's real. And I have to often remind myself that I'm not there anymore.
We ain't.
We
No,
ain't
we
there
ain't.
anymore. You ain't there anymore. My friend Cindy is always telling me, can you believe how far we've come?
Girl, I think
Can
about
you
it all
believe
the
how
time.
far we've come? Do you remember the struggle? You remember the struggle? I I don't struggle no more.
Nope. Nope. And you
I
know
don't
what? It's
struggle
all
no
been
more.
it's been prayer because
Mm-hmm.
I have always been a child of God. I have always been so connected to God, and we can go further deep into that on a
That's a
different
whole other
podcast.
podcast. Mm-hmm.
But but it's been prayer, it's been faith, it's been just not giving up. And that's faith and not giving up go hand in hand. It's knowing having this gnosis that we have a purpose even through all that pain and chaos. I feel like you and I relate to that more than anyone else in the family, is that we feel like we have something bold to offer to the world. We have some purpose. And that, I feel like, carried us through life.
It did, because I always felt like I didn't go through that for nothing.
Same
That's what
here.
it is. I didn't go through that for nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And you
And
know what? And it's adversity, because
it's
adversity can.
adversity.
Mm-hmm. A
I feel
hard
like
time
it's
to show
God.
you who the hell you are.
I feel like it's God knowing his people and using his people as a testimony.
Yeah, that's why they say God don't give you more than you can handle.
Listen, I
Mhm.
do therapy every other week, and it's called lifespan integration if anyone wants to look into it. If you are a person who remembers, who like autistically, okay? Like, no, I have been diagnosed as a high functioning autistic woman, and I've also been diagnosed with um, PMDD, which is premenstrual depression disorder. And that's stuff that I'm all working through. But I'm talking autistic memory. You're able to remember being in your mother's womb. My therapist firmly believes me. And I've had people laugh at me for saying something that is so real to me. But anyways, lifespan integration helps you integrate these stories of your life from the first memory to the present day. It's a very interesting memory. It um, penetrates the right cortex of your brain. It puts you in an imagination state and not in a triggered state. So you're able to imagine the memory and step up from the outside looking in rather than getting into the nervous system. It's almost like you're floating. I really don't know how to explain it, but it's it's great therapy. I don't remember where I was going with that. I feel like I was looping it to something, but it has been a life changer. I have realized so much about my life, and
I mean, I believe that you can remember being in the womb, because I was going through trauma while I was pregnant, and I can see that awakening your nervous system and giving you an awareness that maybe most babies don't have, because they're at peace and quiet and they're not going through trauma. So I can totally believe that, and I know that you're not the first person to
no,
say
I'm
that.
not. I
So,
feel like I connect so much to Salvador Dali through his paintings. His
mm,
paintings are very similar to my dreams. I feel almost like I'm related to the guy. But he has a specific painting, and it's two eggs, or it's an egg and a pan, and the painting was inspired by his his memory of being in his mother's womb.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh my goodness, like this brilliant man that everyone knows, at least, people in the artsy world who know him,
Mm-hmm.
had memories of being in his mother's womb, and his dreams, the depictions of his dreams are so similar to mine. I almost feel like a soul connection to him, but that's when I knew I wasn't nuts. I was like, oh wow. Not only was I fascinated by the man and his art, I was like, whoa, your story.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he also had a traumatizing upbringing. And there's a correlation. There's a relationship there. But anyways, all this to say, we've made it out and we are ready to share.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you for tuning in. Thank you
What's
for
the name
listening
of our
to us.
podcast?
What the F do we know?
No. No.
It's like, we're not experts. What do we know? But we're going to share with you our story and what has worked for us, but what do we know?
Mm-hmm.
So thank you all for being here. We're excited for the next episode. We'll try to make this a weekly occurrence.
Once a
And
week is
possibly
great.
keep it
One
within the
video,
same time. Yeah.
one video, yeah, one video a week.
So let us know, guys, in the comments what you want to hear about. If there's anything, in what we shared, a specific story that you want us to lean into more. Anything.
I got stories.
We got stories.
We got stories. But
So
and we can talk about any topic.
Mm-hmm. Literally, we could go on for hours about anything.
We can talk about psychedelics. We can talk about psychology. We can talk about mental illness. Let's talk about health. Let's talk about wealth. Let's talk about all of it.
All of it.
All of it. Let's do
That's
it.
why it's called "What the F Do We Know?" Because it's going to be
don't know
like
nothing.
Everything.
Erykah Badu said it. Right? A man that knows something knows that he don't know nothing at all. That's the only thing I know, that I know nothing.
Well, it was nice having you guys on. Thank you for being here. Give us all the feedback in the world.
Yes.
We're still learning how to do this podcast, so if you guys have any recommendations on how to have better audio, or like we're using Riverside.fm studio to film this, because we're obviously in 2 different states. So if anyone has any other recommendations for other softwares that work better, we're still playing around with it. So
yeah, if there's any platform we should be on, and if you guys like it, share it.
Yeah.
Share it. Give us your criticism, constructive criticism. But we want to hear it all.
Yes. So I'm going to finish it off with Kendrick.
They not my clothes.
No. Let's finish it up.